The blue light of my computer monitor was the only thing illuminating the room, casting long, jittery shadows against the framed photos of our wedding day. It was 11:42 p.m. The house was silent, save for the rhythmic, low-frequency hum of the refrigerator and the distant, muffled sound of a car passing on the rain-slicked street outside. I sat there, a 39-year-old freelance graphic designer named Alex, staring at a half-finished brand identity for a client I didn't care about. My neck was stiff, and the smell of stale coffee lingered in the air. I looked at the empty side of the bed through the open doorway. Sophie wasn't home. Again, I'm just finishing up the Q3 rollout, Alex, she had told me over the phone 3 hours ago, her voice tight with that professional director energy she'd perfected over the last year at the startup. Don't wait up. Nathan and the team are ordering Thai and pushing through. Love you. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? We had been together for 15 years, 10 of them married. We had a mortgage, 2 beautiful kids. Leo, who was starting to outgrow his shoes every month, and Emma, who still wanted me to check under her bed for shadow monsters. I was the rock. I stayed home. I managed the school runs. I designed logos between loads of laundry. And I supported Sophie as she climbed the corporate ladder. I thought our history was a fortress. I thought 15 years of shared secrets and morning breaths meant we were bulletproof. But as I sat there, the silence of the house felt heavy, almost liquid. A notification chimed on my laptop, an accidental sync from our shared family cloud. It was a forwarded work thread from Sophie's account. My mouse hovered over it. I shouldn't have clicked. I told myself it was just a technical glitch. But then I saw the subject line, regarding tonight. Hi, my name is Alex, and until tonight, I thought I was the luckiest man alive. My wife, Sophie, is brilliant, outgoing, and the kind of woman who commands every room she enters. We've been a team since college. But as I opened that email, the air in the room suddenly felt 20 degrees colder. The first line wasn't about marketing. It was a personal note from Nathan, her new colleague. It said, "The way you looked at the bar tonight, I can't wait for us to be alone." My heart didn't race. It stopped. I felt a strange, tingling numbness in my fingertips. I looked at the digital clock. 11:45 p.m. Sophie had said they were in the office. In this opening, we see the classic stable provider archetype in Alex, whose security is built on a foundation of routine and historical longevity. Psychologically, Alex suffers from normalcy bias, the tendency to believe that because things have been stable for 15 years, they will remain so indefinitely. His identity is deeply intertwined with being the supportive partner, which creates a significant blind spot. Sophie's ambition is framed as a shared victory, masking the growing emotional vacuum between them. The director persona she adopts is a psychological shield, allowing her to compartmentalize her professional/secret life from her domestic one. The chilling effect of the email represents a shattering of the assumptive world, a trauma where a person's core beliefs about their reality are destroyed in a single second. Alex's reaction, the physical numbness, is a somatic response to acute shock, a defense mechanism where the brain temporarily disconnects from the body to process a threat that is too large to handle emotionally. The weeks following that first email were a blur of cognitive dissonance. I didn't confront her immediately. I couldn't. I needed it to be a mistake. Maybe the bar was a team outing. Maybe Nathan was just a flirt and Sophie was ignoring it. Life continued in its mundane, agonizing rhythm. I'd wake up at 6:30 a.m. to the smell of rain and expensive shampoo. Sophie would be in the bathroom, her silhouette blurred through the frosted glass, meticulously applying makeup. She was dressing differently lately, more silk, less wool. Higher heels. Big meeting today? I asked one Tuesday, leaning against the doorframe with a mug of Leo's favorite cocoa. Always, she replied, not looking at me. She was focused on her reflection, her pupils dilated as she traced her lip line. She looked vibrant, electric. I felt like a gray ghost in my own hallway. Nathan thinks we can land the Sterling account if we put in the extra hours this week. Don't forget Emma has gymnastics at 4. She kissed my cheek, a dry, practiced motion, and she was gone. The scent of her perfume, something new and musky, lingered long after the garage door slammed shut. I spent my days in the studio, a corner of the living room cluttered with Pantone swatches and sketches. Leo was becoming withdrawn, spent more time with his headphones on, his brow furrowed as he leveled up in some digital world. Emma was the opposite, clingy and prone to tantrums if I stepped out of her sight for even a minute. Children are like barometers for the hidden weather of a house. They knew the pressure was dropping. I started noticing the micro moves. When Sophie's phone vibrated on the granite countertop, she didn't just pick it up. She swept it away in one fluid motion, her body angling to shield the screen. She'd smile at a text, a genuine, dimpled smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months, and then instantly mask it with a yawn when she saw me watching. One night, I went to the kitchen for water. The house was dark, but I saw a sliver of light under the office door. I heard her voice, low, intimate, a tone she used to reserve for our late-night whispers. "I know," she whispered. "I miss it too. Friday can't come soon enough." My hand froze on the door handle. I stood there in the cold hallway, the hardwood floor biting into my bare feet. I wanted to burst in. I wanted to scream. Instead, I went back to bed and stared at the ceiling, convincing myself she was talking to her mother or her best friend Julia. But I knew the director was no longer playing a role for the company. She was playing one for me. This phase highlights the agonizing gap between the marital script and the hidden reality. Alex expects that his physical presence, being the stay-at-home dad and steady earner, is enough to sustain intimacy. Reality, however, shows that Sophie craves emotional novelty, something Nathan provides through professional shared intensity. The sensory details, the new perfume, the silk clothes, are outward manifestations of Sophie's internal rebranding of herself. She is no longer just a mother or wife. She is an object of desire in a high-stakes world. The children's behavioral changes illustrate systemic family anxiety, where the unspoken tension between parents manifests as developmental regression or withdrawal in offspring. Alex's choice to retreat rather than confront is a classic denial as a survival strategy, where the ego protects itself from a truth that would necessitate the destruction of its current life structure. The doubt was a parasite. It lived in my chest, feeding on every late-night marketing brunch and every urgent Saturday meeting. I called my oldest friend, Ben, a guy who had seen me through every breakup since high school. "Alex, you're not crazy," Ben said as we sat in his car outside a coffee shop. He looked pained. "I saw them, man, at the industry gala last month. I didn't say anything because, well, maybe it was just networking, but they weren't talking business. They were in a corner." Nathan had his hand on the small of her back. She wasn't pulling away. That was the crack that broke the dam. I began to look for the patterns I'd been avoiding. I noticed the red herrings. Sophie would come home with receipts for dinners with Julia, but when I'd casually mention it to Julia later, she'd look confused for a split second before covering for Sophie. They were in it together. The betrayal wasn't just a husband and wife. It was an entire social fabric tearing. I found a hidden app on her phone one evening while she was in the shower. It was disguised as a calculator. When I entered her birthday, a cliche that hurt more than the secret itself, the calculator opened into an encrypted chat. The messages were a roadmap of my own humiliation. Alex is so distracted with his deadline, he didn't even notice I stayed out until 2. "I love the way you look at me, Nathan. It makes me feel alive again." Then the GPS tags. They weren't at the office. They were at a boutique hotel downtown. I felt a surge of nausea. I went to my computer and pulled up the office security footage portal. Sophie had given me the login months ago when she was worried about a late-night delivery. I shouldn't have had access, but she'd forgotten to change the password. I scrolled back to Friday. 8 p.m. The office was empty. But then, in the corner of the lobby cam, I saw them. Sophie and Nathan. They weren't working. They were laughing, sharing a bottle of wine. Then, Nathan leaned in. Sophie didn't hesitate. She met him halfway. The image burned into my retinas. My breathing became shallow, the air in the room feeling like it was made of lead. I sat in the dark, the blue light of the monitor reflecting off my wedding ring. I had the proof. There was no more room for maybe, This section explores the collusion of silence. Julia's involvement introduces a secondary layer of betrayal, showing how infidelity often requires a support network to survive. Psychologically, this isolates Alex even further. He isn't just losing a wife, he's losing a community. Ben's role as the truth bearer is the catalyst that shifts Alex from the passive victim to the active investigator. The use of the calculator app highlights the premeditated nature of the affair. This wasn't a mistake of passion, but a constructed second life. The security footage acts as the objective mirror, stripping away the last vestiges of Alex's denial. His focus on the small of her back and the way she met him halfway shows his brain processing the loss of exclusivity, which is the core trauma of infidelity. The red herrings Sophie planted were meant to exploit Alex's trust, making the eventual revelation a double-edged sword of grief and intellectual insult. I waited for her in the kitchen. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat at the table, the laptop open, the footage paused on the moment their lips touched. When the front door opened at 12:15 a.m., the sound of her heels on the hardwood felt like gunshots. She was humming a song I didn't recognize. "Alex, why are you sitting in the dark?" she asked, her voice light, though I could hear the subtle tremor of adrenaline underneath. She flicked the switch. The overhead fluorescent light was blinding. "Was the Thai food good?" I asked. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else, hollow and metallic. "What?" "Oh yeah, spicy. Nathan always overorders." She started to move toward the stairs. "I'm exhausted, babe. Can we talk in the morning?" "I think we should talk about the Sterling account," I said. I turned the laptop screen toward her. Sophie froze. The color drained from her face so fast, it was like watching a ghost manifest in the kitchen. Her hand went to her throat, her fingers fumbling with the necklace I'd bought her for our 10th anniversary. "Alex, that's not what it looks like," she whispered. The classic line. The first lie of the guilty. "It looks like my wife kissing another man in her office lobby while I'm home making cocoa for our son," I said. I stood up. I didn't shout. Shouting was for people who still had hope. "How long, Sophie?" It was just the stress, the pressure. Nathan understood what I was going through with the startup. "You were always so busy with your clients." "I was home." I finally snapped, the anger breaking through the ice. "I was here for the kids, so you could go have this life. I was the one keeping this family together while you were feeling alive at a boutique hotel." She started to cry, the loud, jagged sobs of someone who had been caught, not someone who was sorry. "It didn't mean anything, Alex. It was just an escape. I love you. We can fix this. We'll go back, Dr. Grant. We'll find a way." "You didn't just escape, Sophie," I said, looking at her as if for the first time. "You left. You've been gone for months." I walked past her, out into the night air. It was raining again, cold and sharp. I stood on the driveway and breathed in the smell of wet asphalt, feeling the weight of 15 years collapse into the dirt. The confrontation serves as the climax of the illusion. Sophie's immediate recourse to gaslighting, "It's not what it looks like," followed by blame shifting, "You were always so busy," are standard psychological defense mechanisms used to reduce cognitive dissonance. She cannot be both a good wife and a cheater, so she attempts to rewrite the narrative to make Alex the cause of her choices. Alex's refusal to shout initially shows a shift into emotional detachment, a state where the bond is already severed. The fluorescent light represents the harsh truth that can no longer be softened. The moment Alex identifies her tears as being for herself rather than for the pain she caused is a point of no return. Psychologically, he realizes that her remorse is situational. She's sorry she got caught. Rather than relational, she's sorry she hurt him. The next week was a ghost story. We lived in the same house, but moved through it like parallel lines that would never touch again. I slept in the studio. Every morning, I'd hear the kids asking why mommy was crying or why daddy wasn't coming into the kitchen for breakfast. Sophie tried. She really did. She brought home brochures for marriage retreats. She made family dinners that tasted like cardboard. She even told me she'd resigned from the startup, that Nathan was blocked, deleted, gone. I'll do anything. Alex, she pleaded one night, sitting on the edge of the sofa, looking small and fragile. Don't throw away 15 years for a few months of madness. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt a profound, echoing pity. It's not the months, Sophie, I said quietly. It's the fact that I can't look at you without seeing the person who lied to my face every morning for a year. I don't know who you are. And worse, I don't know who I am when I'm with you anymore. I called a lawyer on Thursday. Sitting in that sterile office, surrounded by the smell of old paper and expensive cologne, felt more honest than any moment I'd spent in my own home over the last month. I sat the kids down on Saturday. Leo took it hard. He just nodded and went back to his room, but I saw his hands shaking. Emma cried, clinging to my leg as if I were about to drift out to sea. We're still a team, I told them, my voice cracking. Just a different kind of team. Ipek to bake. Not all of my things, just enough for a few weeks of bins. As I walked out the door, I saw my wedding ring sitting on the hallway table. It looked like a tiny silver zero, a hole where a life used to be. Sophie was standing in the kitchen, her back to me. I didn't say goodbye. I just closed the door. The sound was soft, final. This section depicts the grief cycle in real time. Sophie's attempts at restitution, quitting her job, therapy, are common, but they often come too late because the foundational trust has been incinerated. Alex's realization that he doesn't know who he is when with her highlights the identity loss that occurs in long-term relationships. He had defined himself as Sophie's husband, and that role is now toxic. The wedding ring as a zero is a powerful symbol of the void of meaning. The realization that the history he valued was built on a lie, effectively nullifying the past. The decision to leave, despite the pain of the children, represents the reclamation of self. Psychologically, Alex chooses autonomy over security, recognizing that a stable house held together by lies is more damaging to his children than a broken home held together by truth. 6 months later, the sun was streaming through the windows of my new apartment, a small, high-ceilinged loft in the city. It didn't smell like silk and expensive shampoo. It smelled like fresh coffee, oil paints, and the cedarwood candle Emma had picked out for me. I sat at my new desk, a solid oak piece I'd bought with the first paycheck from my new agency job. I'd stopped freelancing. I needed the structure, the people, the noise of a bustling office. Leo was sitting on the rug, sketching. He'd traded his headphones for charcoals. We talked more now than we ever had when I lived in that big, silent house. Emma was in the corner, organizing my bookshelf. We had a routine. We had peace. Sophie and I co-parented with a clinical, polite efficiency. She had moved into a smaller place, and from what Ben told me, she was struggling to find her footing. I didn't relish it. I just didn't care. That was the real healing, the indifference. I looked at a photo on my desk. It wasn't a wedding photo. It was a picture of me, Leo, and Emma at the park last weekend. I looked tired, but my eyes were clear. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't the supportive shadow of someone else's ambition. I was just Alex. I realized then that trust is like a mirror. Once it's shattered, you can glue it back together, but you'll always see the cracks in the reflection. And sometimes it's better to just buy a new mirror and see yourself clearly for the first time. Nearly 30% of marriages face situations like this, and I was one of them. But I learned that the end of a marriage isn't the end of a life. It's just the end of a lie. Would you forgive a betrayal that lasted a year, or would you walk through the door like I did? The story of Alex and Sophie is a psychological study of the evolution of the self through the crucible of betrayal. The narrative arc moves from blind stability to traumatic awakening and finally to authentic independence. The central lesson is that infidelity is rarely about the partner. It is about the cheater's relationship with themselves. Sophie's affair was a pursuit of a lost version of herself, while Alex's journey was a reclamation of a self he had sacrificed for the marriage. The indifference Alex feels at the end is the ultimate psychological resolution. Anger is still a form of attachment. Indifference is true freedom. By choosing to prioritize his own integrity over a hollow domestic structure, Alex provided a healthier model for his children. showing them that while betrayal is a reality of the human condition, resilience and self-respect are the tools we use to survive it. The story concludes not with a happily ever after, but with a meaningfully ever after, emphasizing that growth often requires the destruction of what we once thought was essential.